Okay, and we're broadcasting. Welcome to the latest edition of Medcan Presents, the twice-a-week webinar series that happens every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Today's webinar is on the Mind Diet for Brain Health with Leslie Beck. And my name is Christopher Shulgan. I'm part of the team that creates content at Medcan. Leslie Beck is Medcan's Director of Food and Nutrition. I'll run through her bio. And then Leslie will take it over and we'll take questions at the end. As one of Canada's leading dietitians, Leslie has operated a successful private practice in the heart of downtown Toronto since 1989. She writes a weekly column in the Globe and Mail, and her nutrition advice can be heard every week on Montreal's CJAD Radio's Andrew Carter Show. She's the best-selling author of 12 books on nutrition and health. Born and raised in Vancouver, Leslie obtained her Bachelor of Science Dietetics from the University of British Columbia and is a member of the College of Dietitians of Ontario and Dietitians of Canada. How are you, Leslie?
I'm great, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. As we're doing this, I think Premier Ford is going through and announcing a relaxation of social distancing and physical distancing. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I bet we all are.
So why don't you share your screen and we'll start your deck.
We'll get started.
I'm really excited about this one. And we should mention probably to people as well that it helps if you have a pen and paper or a pencil and paper, because we're going to be doing
for sure
quiz, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's going to have the opportunity to score their own diet. So pen and paper for sure. And I'll remind you again. Yeah, no, it'll be fun. Okay, here goes.
I'm just getting my pen and paper right now, and you can share your
great
screen. Perfect.
Well, thank you everybody for joining me to talk about the Mind Diet for Brain Health today. I'm excited for the presentation. The prevention of cognitive decline, which is the hallmark feature of dementia, is absolutely a public health priority. As of today, over 500,000 Canadians are living with Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, and about 25,000 new cases are diagnosed every year. And by the year 2031, this is expected to nearly double, and that's only 11 years away. And it's estimated by delaying the onset of disease by just 5 years will reduce the prevalence of dementia by 1/2. And dietary interventions have absolutely the potential to be an effective strategy to prevent dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And so really that's what we're talking about today. I'm showing you, this is what we're going to cover today. I want to introduce you to the healthiest diets in the world, just simply based on all the evidence around their numerous health benefits. Then we're going to take a deeper dive into the Mind Diet. I'm going to tell you which foods we should be eating more and which ones we should be limiting to preserve cognitive function as we age. Then you'll have the opportunity to actually score your own diet to see how closely it matches the Mind Diet. And we're going to use the exact same scoring system that's been used in research. And this is when you'll need your pen and paper. And of course, at the end, I'll be happy to take questions and answers. All right. So I want to begin just by showing you the numbers that you see here come from a major study that was published in 2009 that clearly showed that healthy living is the best revenge against chronic disease. And this study involved over 23,000 people, ages 35 to 65, and they were followed for 8 years. And what the researchers found, that having a combination of healthy lifestyle behaviors, eating a healthy diet, maintaining a healthy weight, exercising regularly, and not smoking, significantly protected very strongly against chronic disease. So compared to people who didn't have any of those healthy behaviors, having all four was associated with preventing 9 out of 10 cases of type 2 diabetes. So think about that for a moment. Type 2 diabetes is largely preventable, but we're seeing an epidemic of it in this country, in North America. Those same lifestyle factors would avert 8 out of 10 cases of coronary heart disease, 1/2 of strokes, and almost 40% of lifestyle-related cancers. The last point, you'll see a little space there. I talk about Alzheimer's disease on this slide. Now, Alzheimer's disease was not an outcome of the particular study I just talked about, but other research, which I'll discuss with you in a minute, found that simply eating a certain way, a certain dietary pattern, was associated with a 35 to 53% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So my point here is that we know what you eat and how you live have a profound influence on the likelihood of developing a chronic disease. Okay, so I want to introduce you here to three very, very healthy diets. And really, when it comes to health, what we're talking about is a dietary pattern, not a diet per se. What really matters most to health is the quality, the quantity, and the combination of foods you eat on a regular basis. That's what counts when it comes to health. So what you see here are three very healthy dietary patterns that have got a lot of evidence behind them for many different health benefits. The Mediterranean diet, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. It truly is considered the gold standard diet. It's been the focus of hundreds of studies that have found it to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, certain cancers, and also cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. It is a plant-forward diet. It's not a vegan diet, but what I mean by that is everyday foods include fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans and lentils, nuts. Red meat is eaten in low amounts, maybe 3 times a week. And of course, the principal fat in the diet is olive oil, which is a rich source of monounsaturated fat, which has anti-inflammatory benefits in the body. The DASH diet, DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. It was originally designed to lower elevated blood pressure, which it has been proven to do very well in randomized controlled trials. But since then, it's been shown to provide many other health benefits, including preventing dementia. And its hallmark foods include fruits and vegetables, beans and lentils, and low-fat dairy products. The MIND diet. So this dietary pattern, which we're really going to get into, it includes elements of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, but it also includes very specific foods that have been associated with optimal brain function in previous studies. So now let's just take a deeper dive into the MIND diet. It was developed by researchers at Rush University Medical Center. As I mentioned, it's a hybrid of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet and includes other foods tied to brain health. It really made news in 2015, and that's when researchers published 2 studies that linked the MIND diet to protecting the brain as we age. And for these 2 studies, researchers analyzed the food intakes of almost 1,000 healthy older adults. They were aged 58 to 98, and they all lived in Chicago. And I will say that these were healthy, independently living adults. So the first study found that people whose diets scored very closely to the MIND diet had slower cognitive decline, cognitive function over the 5-year study compared to people whose diets didn't match the MIND diet very well at all. And the difference in cognitive decline by having the top MIND diet score versus the lowest MIND diet score, that was equivalent to 7.5 years being younger in age. The second study looked specifically at the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease over 4.5 years. People were scored on how closely their usual diets matched either the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, or the MIND diet. And all 3 diets, what they found when they were really closely followed, offered significant protection against Alzheimer's disease. People who had top MIND diet scores versus low MIND diet scores had a 53% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease over the course of the study. Only the MIND diet, however, was shown to protect against Alzheimer's disease when it was just moderately followed. So people who followed the plan moderately well were 35% less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease over the course of the study. And the findings also hinted that the longer people ate that way, that their diets resembled the MIND diet, the greater the protection from Alzheimer's disease. So what's in the MIND diet? There are 10 brain healthy food groups and 5 brain unhealthy food groups. So just briefly right now, these groups include leafy green vegetables. And by that, I'm talking about, kale, spinach, rapini, romaine lettuce, leaf lettuce, arugula. Another category is all other vegetables. So anything that's not leafy green would fall into that category. Berries are a brain healthy food group, as many of us know. Nuts as well. So are beans and lentils. Whole grains, fish, poultry, olive oil, and wine, and which is interesting, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So in terms of the Mind Diet, really does also advises that 5 brain unhealthy food groups, red meat, butter and hard stick margarine, fried or fast food, cheese, and pastry and sweets. They advise that these be limited. And these foods are high in saturated and or trans fat. Both of these types of fat damage the arteries. And actually studies have associated diets, people who have high saturated fat diets, that is linked to a greater risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so now is time to pull out your pen and paper. I want you all to really think about your usual diet and score yourself. And we're going to get a score and you're going to see how you do. So first of all, we're going to go through each brain-friendly food group. And as we go through this assessment tool, I want you to keep in mind the serving frequency, whether it's per day, per week, that's associated with giving yourself 1 point. That's what the goal is, and that's the best score you can get. So, so when it comes to leafy green vegetables, think about your usual diet. We talked about all the leafy greens. Think about whether you have them fresh, whether you have them frozen, whether you have salads, you add them to shakes and smoothies, whether you have them as a side dish. If you have 2 servings or less a week, give yourself 0 points. If you eat leafy green vegetables 3 to 5 times a week, give yourself half a point. And if you have them at least 6 times a week, give yourself a full 1 point. And, I do say here a serving size is considered half a cup of cooked leafy greens or 1 cup raw. You can think about that if you want, but, for the purposes of this assessment, you can even just think about how many times you have them in a week. Don't worry so much about the serving. Okay. And so when you're making notes, write down leafy green vegetables, each food group, and write down the point you give yourself so you can go back and see where you need to perhaps increase your score. Okay, moving on. Other vegetables, same serving sizes. If you have a serving of other vegetables less than 5 times a week, 0 points. 5 to 6 times a week, half a point. If you have other vegetables at least once a day, a full point. And this includes things like onions as well. So mushrooms, carrots, bell peppers, green beans, cauliflower, everything else. Okay, we're good there. Let's move on to berries. Serving is half a cup. Whether you throw them on top of your oatmeal, you throw them into a smoothie, you have them for dessert, think about all the ways you may include berries in your diet. If you don't even have them once a week, 0 points. If you only have berries once a week, half a point. And if you have them 2 or more times a week, give yourself a full point. And, all berries count here. I've also added pomegranate seeds to this because they have the same polyphenols. They're an excellent source of polyphenols, which are thought to protect the brain, just like blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, and so on. Okay, nuts. And here we're talking about all types of nuts, not just almonds we always hear about, but cashews, walnuts. And walnuts may have extra benefits. They are the only nut that has an omega-3 fatty acid in them called alpha linolenic acid, or ALA. No other nuts have as much as walnuts do. So a serving is about 1/3 of a cup, a handful. If you don't even have nuts once a month, 0 points. If you have them once a month, up to 4 times a week, half a point. If you eat nuts 5 or more times a week, give yourself a full point. Okay. All right. You might need a little bit of time to think about that. Okay. Beans and lentils. A serving is half a cup, and this can be out of the can. It could be dried beans that you cook. But think about the meals you have in a typical week. Do they or do they not include beans or lentils? And soybeans are included here as well. So that might be edamame. That might be mature soybeans. It could even be tofu. So if you don't even have one meal a week, including these foods, 0 points. 1 to 3 meals a week, half a point. Or if you eat them more than 3 times a week in a meal, give yourself a full point. And all of these foods that we're talking about, so beans and lentils, for example, are excellent sources of folate. And that's a B vitamin that helps protect the brain by keeping the level of an amino acid called homocysteine in the bloodstream lower. It helps to lower it. And if your homocysteine levels are elevated, that can cause damage to artery walls, which can damage your brain. Okay. Whole grains. So a serving's half a cup cooked, whether that's might be something like brown rice, red rice, quinoa, whole wheat pasta, or it would be a slice of 100% whole grain bread, whether it's 100% whole wheat bread or a bread with mixed grains in it. So if you're not even eating a serving of whole grain each week, that's 0 points. If you're having whole grains 1 to 3 times a week, half a point. More than 3 a week, 1 point. And I've alluded to this earlier, but you know, any foods that promote cardiovascular health, like whole grains do, like nuts do, like beans and lentils, they're also good for your brain. And that's because your heart and your blood vessels supply nutrient and oxygen-rich blood to your brain. And if your brain doesn't get the blood flow it needs, that can impair your memory and your thinking abilities. And the other thing that fiber does in whole grains and certain beans and lentils as well, it acts as a prebiotic. So it fuels the growth of those friendly, good gut bacteria, which also may play a role in brain health. Okay, fish. Think about all the fish in your diet. Tuna fish sandwiches count, but not fried fish. So it's baked, grilled, poached. It can be oily fish like salmon or trout. It can be white fish. If you rarely eat fish, not even monthly, 0, 1 to 3 times a month, half a point. If you're eating fish at least once a week, give yourself a point. Think about poultry as well. So chicken and turkey, you know, and as part of a healthy eating plan, eating more poultry and less red meat is associated with a lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. And that's why it's one of these food groups. So again, same scoring system. If you rarely eat poultry, 0 points. 1 to 3 times a week. 1 to 3 times a month, half a point. At least weekly, 1 point. And the last 2 foods on the brain friendly category, the brain healthy categories, are olive oil and wine. So olive oil, it's quite simply a 0 or a 1. It's either your primary oil you use in cooking and salad dressings, or it's not. So if it's not your primary oil, 0 points. If it's your primary oil, 1 point. And then wine. So here a serving size is considered 5 ounces. Here's the scoring system, and this might surprise you. So if you have more than 1 5-ounce glass of wine a day, or you never drink wine, you get 0 points. If you have a glass of wine once a month, up to 6 times a week, you get half a point. If you have quite simply 1 5-ounce glass of wine a day, you get 1 point. And you may think, well, gee, you know, I don't drink wine at all. I should get more points for that. But in fact, a very low level of wine, like 5 ounces a day, is considered to have anti-inflammatory effects in the brain, whereas more can damage the brain. So that's why 1 a day seems to be what's optimal. Okay, we're going to move on now to the 5 brain unhealthy or unfriendly food groups. Red meat, think about that. And what we count as red meat: beef, pork, lamb. This might be burgers, even fresh and processed too. So cold cuts, sausages, bacon. If you have more than 7 meals a week that contain red meat, 0 points. 4 to 6 times a week, half a point. And if you eat red meat less than 4 times a week, so, you know, 3 or less, 1 point. Same thing with cheese. More than 7 times a week, 0 points. 4 to 6 times a week, half a point. If you eat cheese less than once a week, you're going to get 1 point. Everybody okay? I wish I could see everybody doing this so I know if you're finished. Anyway, all right. And then the last three foods, butter or margarine. And we're talking about hard stick margarine. So if you think you consume more than 2 tablespoons of those fats a day, 0 points, 1 to 2 tablespoons a day, half, or if you have less than a tablespoon a day, give yourself 1 point. The question for fried or fast foods is, how often do you eat fried foods away from home? So we're restaurants, fast food restaurants. And I've given you some examples there. More than at least 4 times a week or more, 0 points, 1 to 3 times a week, half a point, less than once a week, up 1 point. Sweets can be anything from, cookies, pie, cake, ice cream. It can be muffins, croissants, chocolate bars, etc. 7 or greater times a week, 0 points, 4 to 6 times a week, half a point, less than 5 times a week, 1 point. That's pretty generous, I'd say. So that is the scoring system. And I want you to, think about that, tally up your points, and you'll come to a score out of 15. So wonder how you do. So out of 15. And here is what the study did. So people whose diets very closely matched the MIND diet. So they had high compliance to this. In all the research, the score was anywhere from 8.5 to 12.5 out of 15, but the average of 9. So 9 or higher is considered closely matching the MIND diet. People who, and that was associated with the 53% reduction in risk of developing Alzheimer's over the 5-year period. People who followed it moderately well, that was 7 to 8. That was their average score. 7.5 was the average score. So think about where you stand. And I would say, even if you got a 10, which is fantastic, congratulations, there's always room for improvement. So what I'd like you to do is sort of take a look at what you wrote down for each food group. What was your score? And where you didn't get a 1, where could you do better? And so I think, to just kind of finalize before I take some questions, there you can fill in. I'd love to get your input on that, where you scored, to see how everybody's doing. But really, so take a look at your answers, and my homework for you is set a goal. I would like you to make one realistic goal, very specific about your diet, how you're going to improve it to get a better score in that area of the MIND diet. Write it down, commit to it, and then make it happen for the next 7 days. And then week after that, set a new goal. If you want, you can keep a food diary for accountability, track it on an app. But the point is just always striving for improvement. So thank you. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, spending your lunch with me. Wow, very good. Excellent. You're all very healthy eaters. I'm glad. And not surprising, since you're interested in this topic. But I think, as I say, all of us, we can always improve a little bit, and I would give you that homework to take away with you. Okay. I can't hear you, Chris.
I had muted myself.
Okay.
So we do have quite a few questions.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I'll just run through them, and we'll try to get as many as we can in before
absolutely.
the top of the hour.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, so in terms of short questions, does soy milk count as beans and lentils?
I'm going to say no, because 2 reasons. Number one, it wasn't included in the foods that the researchers asked participants about, and it won't be as rich of a source of, it's not a whole food. So when you talk about soybeans, you've got the protein, you've got the fiber, you've got the phytochemicals and antioxidants in them. When you make soy milk, unless you're grinding it from whole beans, but most commercial products, they take soy protein isolate, so it's made differently. It won't have all those components.
Perfect. Do seeds count for nuts, and does basmati rice count?
So See, it's strictly nuts that were asked in the study, not seeds. That said, you know, many types of seeds are still very nutritious. But in this research, what we know, and it's the same thing with the DASH diet too. The DASH diet includes nuts specifically. So it's really hard to say whether if you replace seeds with nuts, which somebody who is allergic to nuts would want to do for sure, have the same effect on your brain. But I would say seeds have many similarities to nuts as well. And the other question was, does basmati rice count? Was that,
yeah,
if it's brown basmati rice, it would be
brown
considered a whole grain, yes.
Okay, perfect. A couple of people have asked this one. Does it matter if it's red or white wine?
That's an excellent question. So both types of wine have polyphenols. That's a type of flavonoid that's thought to protect. But red wine is going to have a lot more polyphenols, the beneficial compound, because red wine is made using the whole part of the red grapes, the seeds and the skin. So more polyphenols diffuse into the wine, whereas white wine is just made with grape juice. The other interesting, for any wine connoisseurs out there, I have read that red wines from southwestern France and Sardinia, Italy, are thought to have the highest level of polyphenols. So just a little tip there.
That's fascinating, actually. Eggs are in the Mediterranean diet, but not on the MIND diet list. What's your position on eggs and how many per week?
Good question, the great egg debate. So eggs, first of all, are very nutritious. They're very healthy. They're a good source of protein. And actually, you know, 40% of the protein in an egg is found in the yolk. So it's not all in the egg whites. But egg yolks also have choline, which is a B-like vitamin that's needed for brain function. And actually, we have a daily requirement. So, I guess it was about 5 years ago, we've always been told, until recently, that, you know what, don't consume more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol a day because it could raise your blood cholesterol. It's not good for your heart. One large egg yolk has about 190 milligrams of cholesterol. 5 years ago, the Dietary Guidelines for America removed that directional statement. So they no longer said limit cholesterol intake to 300 milligrams a day. And that was based on research that, you know, we've known that food cholesterol, whether it's in shrimp, egg yolks, other things, has little or no impact on most people's blood cholesterol. So it's fine to eat whole eggs. I wouldn't exceed 2 a day. There is a little bit of research to hint that maybe more than that isn't good for you. However, there are some experts still that recommend people who have existing coronary heart disease, have diabetes, should still be careful with their cholesterol intake, and so maybe limit it to 1 a day. It's thought that it's possible that people with diabetes, for example, may be more efficient at absorbing cholesterol from food in their intestine, and so it ends up in the bloodstream. But eggs are healthy; include them. 1 a day is fine.
I love this question. Which MIND diet book would you recommend?
Ooh, well, I don't know all of the MIND diet books out there, but I would say you would want to make sure that it's written by or endorsed by Rush University Medical, Rush University Medical Center, because that's where all the research came from. And the other point I want to make, we talked about the 2 studies of the MIND diet that were published in 2015. Those were observational studies that followed people over the 5-year period. So it found very strong associations between eating like the MIND diet and cognitive health. It can't prove that absolutely eating that diet will reduce your risk. But right now, there are, I believe, 2 or 3, it was on my slide, randomized controlled trials underway that's looking at the MIND diet and cognitive health and Alzheimer's disease risk as well. So randomized controlled trials, are really the gold standard of scientific evidence because they do prove cause and effect. And I believe we should be seeing results sometime in 2021. So stay tuned.
Okay, that's fascinating. Leslie, do you have 5 more minutes? There are a ton of questions still that we haven't gone through, and
yeah.
So we'll do 5 more minutes of questions. And then are you doing an Instagram Live anytime soon?
I am, Tuesday, noon, Eastern time.
Tuesday at noon. So, and that's a Q&A session, right?
Yeah, it's a Q&A session. So I answer questions. They're short, all variety of topics. And, you know, we're on for no more than 15 minutes. So it's quick. It's just a little hit. It's fun to do. And it's a variety, everything from gut health to brain health to, you know, what's the most natural kind of sugar, if there's such a thing to eat. All, you know, it's just a variety. Vitamin supplements, we cover everything.
So folks, if we don't get to your questions today,
Yeah.
Tuesday at noon at the Medcan Instagram site, which is at Medcan Live Well on Instagram. Okay,
that's a great idea, Chris. I'll any questions I don't answer, I'll try to turn some of them around on Tuesday.
Perfect. Okay, so a couple of people have asked this one. Hi, I have yogurt and berries for breakfast every day. Is it better to have high fat or low fat yogurt? And then somebody else asked about Greek yogurt, which I think is
okay. So high fat, well, no question, low fat yogurt. And the reason is because high fat yogurt will be higher in saturated fat. Saturated fat, it's very clear cut that a high intake of saturated fat, number one, increases LDL or bad blood cholesterol, which can over time damage your arteries. And again, anything that affects your heart health affects your brain health. And we've also seen in observational research that high saturated fat diets, as I mentioned earlier, are tied to a greater risk of Alzheimer's disease. So you do want to keep your saturated animal fat down.
Great. Was anything mentioned about plant sterols in this guide?
No, they weren't mentioned. So for those of you out there who haven't heard of this before, plant sterols are naturally occurring compounds found in seeds and nuts and whole grains. And when you consume them in large amounts, more than you can get through foods, you need to take a supplement. They do help to lower, studies have shown to help to lower LDL blood cholesterol by up to 13, maybe 15%, but let's say 13%. So they can be part of an approach, a program to lower high levels of blood cholesterol. And certainly at Medcan, we talk about that to some of our clients. Plant sterols are part of a dietary pattern called the portfolio diet that actually was developed by a researcher, Dr. David Jenkins at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. And this particular dietary pattern is a portfolio of cholesterol lowering foods, plant sterols, soy foods, soluble fibers, so things like oats and oat bran, psyllium, they have specific type of fiber that lowers cholesterol and others. So that's where they fit in, but no, plant sterols are not part of the MIND diet.
Okay. Okay, 2 more questions, let's say. Would you say following a plant-based whole foods diet without chicken or fish puts people at a disadvantage in terms of brain health?
So I absolutely can't answer that, only because it's never been studied. We have never compared a 100% plant-based diet versus a MIND diet per se. And I mean, I think 100% plant-based diets are very healthy. There's research around those with the health benefits, particularly around cardiovascular health, diabetes, etc. But it's just the head-to-head comparison has never been done, so I couldn't tell you that. I think they're both healthy, and yeah, sure. If you're not having oily fish like salmon in your diet, you're not getting the omega-3 fatty acids, in particular one called DHA, and DHA is the omega-3 fatty acid that makes its way to your brain, where it protects your brain cells from free radical damage, among other functions it has. But that said, you know, some vegan clients I have take DHA supplements made from algae. So, and that's how the fish get it. The fish accumulate DHA by eating algae.
Okay, last question. Would the MIND diet be beneficial to persons already diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
Again, that hasn't been studied either. So I certainly couldn't even say that. I mean, it's a healthy way to eat. Absolutely. So it would be a healthy diet for someone who does have Alzheimer's disease to follow, certainly. But again, it's never been studied in people with Alzheimer's disease. So saying that it might help, slow the progression or ease symptoms, it's impossible to say.
Okay, thank you so much, Leslie.
You're more than welcome.
These questions are great. And I would, so Instagram, Tuesdays noon, that's at Medcan Live Well. Also, we'll post this webinar on YouTube. So just go to YouTube and type in Medcan, and then you'll be able to find your way to this webinar. And we'll post this certainly within 24 hours. We'll do that. And finally, I just wanted to walk through, so future webinars, because it can be a little bit difficult. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to go to the Medcan website. Leslie, can you see?
Yeah,
the
great.
website?
I can see.
Yeah. Okay. So to see our webinar schedule, it's a little tricky. So you want to go on the Medcan website. You want to go down to the Keeping Communities Healthy page, and then scroll down. And then we have our calendar of webinars and Instagram feeds and things like that. And you can register for tomorrow. We have a great one. Mindfulness for Leaders During COVID-19 with Michael Apollo, who is great. And you just click on the webinar there to link there. So this is great. I think, boy, this was a fun one. And I love the idea of the quiz. Thanks so much, Leslie. Thanks so much for everybody who joined us.
Yes, thank you.
Leslie, do you have any final words?
No, I mean, everybody is doing great. It looks like by those scores. So just keep up the good work. And I really appreciate you joining me today. It's been fun. Thank you.
And Leslie, we'll have you on again as a webinar in June as well. So
okay, awesome.
well. Okay. Talk to everyone soon.
Have a great day.
Very much.